we've got most folks here, so I am going to get us started today. Good morning. We're really excited to have Dr. Sardarian here today to talk about minding our minds and mindfulness in what has become a really stressful time in many of our lives. So perfect timing. And what I'd like to do is first let our president introduce our speaker and say hello this morning. And there we go. So Phil, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning. So yeah, welcome everyone. So glad to have you today. The topic today is frankly just awesome. And it comes from our clinical applications informatics committee. So we're starting to see the fruit of our transformation as the committees put forward ideas for presentations and different things that they want to do. So I would also ask you to forward to those committee chairpersons any ideas that you have for things that you'd like to see. And I'm not just talking about events. I'm also talking about for instance, if the cybersecurity group wanted to have some kind of hackathon, or tech and infrastructure wanted to have some sort of create some kind of test network to test ideas out. I mean, those are all ideas that bubble them up and let's talk about them. Let's do them. So anyway, our guest speaker today is Dr. Ludwig Zargarian. He's an anesthesiologist working in Frederick, Maryland. A very impressive resume, chair of the Department of Anesthesia, and works on the clinical governance side of U.S. Anesthesia Partners, of which he's a partner. So definitely someone who understands stress, who understands the danger and the challenge of burnout. And so we're so happy to have him here today to talk to us about mindfulness and about maybe just being able to manage it all a little better.
Thank you for the introduction, Cyril.
Hey, everybody. I am looking at the chat and I have a couple people asking if we're hearing an echo. I am not hearing an echo. Anybody else, you want to raise your hand and tell me you're hearing an echo, and we'll see if we've got a problem, but it might just be on that person's end. Okay, I think they switched and it's sounding better. Great. Thank you everybody for your feedback. And just one more note, folks. I think this presentation is going to be very intriguing, and we'd like to give you guys the opportunity during the Q&A to really engage. So if you want to ask a question, you can certainly put it in the chat, but I also will try to be quick and jump on. If you raise your hand, I will try to unmute you and allow you to kind of have a two-way dialogue with Dr. Sardarian. So just feel free to do that when we open it up. And but we will be watching the chat versus the Q&A, if you don't mind. I'll try to watch both, but if it's all in one place, it'll be a lot easier for me. And the last thing I want to say is we always want to put a big thank you out to our sponsors. We couldn't do this without them. Their financial and logistics support is so important to our organization. And obviously their partnership in many of your organizations in delivering solutions to the environment is so very important. So thanks to our sponsors. And now I am going to stop sharing my screen and let our presenter begin sharing his. So give us 1 second to do that.
All right. Thank you so much for the introductions, Phil and everyone. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be able to present to this group, and appreciates everyone's attention around the lunchtime period. So today's talk I've labeled "Minding Our Minds." Let me make sure that everything is working here. Yeah. And part of the reason I labeled it this is because as some of the introductions mentioned about my career and multiple hats, and I'll go into some of my personal life as well, which is important when we're talking about issues of the mind, but having 4 kids and a busy life at home as well, many of us can relate that our personal minds and our well-being of our brain is one of the last things we think about, and often we don't think about. And so taking intentional notice of it is what this talk is about and what mindfulness really is about. With that being said, how has the last 23 months been for everyone on this call, on this meeting, and around the world for that matter? We've had increased stress, anxiety, and pressure, to say the least. Structures and schedules have been thrown out. That's a very important part of how humans function. Many people have lost loved ones, someone they know, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. Vacations have stopped, and even those folks that were able to travel, that form of vacation has changed. The concept of socializing has completely changed, and you can't underestimate the power of that. And I've called this entire concept almost an institutionalized agoraphobia or hypochondria, even for those that are, pretty stern and powerful against these phobias. It's almost been institutionalized by what COVID has done. And so we've had a loss of life, loss of jobs, and most sadly, we've had a loss of hope. And again, for those that are highly motivated, go to work every day, have a lot of good things going on, even those people the hope gets tapped into. And so what we're seeing is a significant workforce burnout. And I put healthcare here, but you can put any walk of life, any job in there, whether it's school teachers, police officers, pilots, anyone within the IT industry. There is significant burnout. And, there's a lot of data out there about the great resignation, which we're all living through right now. 40% to 50% of workforces, you named industry, are walking out. I jokingly say my kids' soccer games get canceled because they can't find referees. So it's not any specific industry. Everyone's kind of leaving. And so within the healthcare field, you're seeing a lot of articles about, the importance of transformative EHR to reduce physician burnout and how that's potentially a cause. And I know that has some links to the group that I'm talking to today, but the design of EHR systems and the effects on physician burnout, healthcare burnout. But I put all these slides up there to mention that it's all interconnected, right? There's all of these pressures on every walk of life, every type of work that you're in. And so everyone has their selective burnout within their individual fields. And so the question is, what do we do about it? Is the answer to walk away from work, to change your job, to go do something else? We've seen it in healthcare quite a bit. We've had nurses and techs and other healthcare providers kind of leave and then come back and leave again. But is that really the answer? Axios did a really good paper on this back in June. And so to me, the question I've raised is, has COVID in the last 2 years unearthed this insidious societal, social, human dissonance, this concept of what are we doing? Why are we? What's the purpose? You go through high school and college and you get a job, you have a family, and then suddenly you're somewhere in your life and COVID made it all seem like it doesn't mean anything. And there's a lot of people I talk to that there is this question of why are we? And so I can relate as someone that has taken on a lot of hats, and it all happened at the beginning of COVID and through the peak of COVID. So I went through this journey, and I was having significant burnout about 1.5 years ago, right at the beginning of COVID. I had a very busy life, multiple different jobs. I got a busy family with 4 kids who I love dearly, but kids can be a handful as well, including a little toddler at home. And wearing multiple hats at work, all within healthcare, but all with differing responsibilities. And so there wasn't enough time Everyone wanted the time, and everyone on this Zoom call can relate to some extent. And I think the biggest challenge was there wasn't any guidance from leadership or someone in a mentoring position or someone to guide to figure out, how do you manage it? How do you handle the burnout? Stress reduction, unfortunately, sounds great, but it's not really an option. And so, being that I'm a doctor and I've spent most of my life in school, I went back to the well and I said, you know what, I'm going to go get educated and I'm going to learn my way out of this. And so I went back to school, and I wanted to really be back to school and really do this the right way. So I applied to University of Maryland, where I've done all my education. And I went to the Smith School of Business, which is a pretty well-known program. And I wanted to learn business. I wanted to learn, what is it I'm not understanding? Is it me not understanding the world that's making me burn out? And so I got into the program. We got started. COVID hit, and what did I learn? Well, turns out the first week of that program, they stressed and stressed and stressed. And this was before COVID really hit. It was last January of 2020. And they just talked about mindfulness and the power of it in the business world, in the corporate world, and the science to back it up, and how important it is in leadership and corporate results, for that matter. And I was taken aback, to be honest with you, that this was a topic that was really focused on. And so I took it seriously, and when COVID hit, it really became my fallback to change the way I approach things in life. And so the question was, what is mindfulness? It's thrown around a lot. My iWatch is now pinging me at nighttime to have a mindful moment, and elementary school kids and high school kids, and everyone's talking about it. But what is it? It's important to understand the true definition of it. And so mindfulness really is an activity explicitly designed to quiet and recenter the mind. And it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be walking, it could be something you do that recenters you. To some people, it's going to the gym and doing a workout. Jon Kabat-Zinn is really the guru, the scientific godfather, if you will, of mindfulness. And he has an institute up at Harvard that has been dealing with this for over 20 years. And he calls it the state of consciousness which individuals pay attention to the present moment with accepting and non-judgmental attitude. And that's key, right? Acceptance and non-judgmental. I mean, most humans, as far as I was raised, I remember judgmental behavior is something that we pass on from generation to generation, just humans are. But it's very tasking, and it's really drains the mind and the soul. And so this accepting and non-judgmental attitude is key to mindfulness. And it's something that needs to be done proactively and intentionally. And we'll get to it in a second. And so mindfulness really has 10 pillars. It's easy to remember, easy to follow. And awareness is one of them. Again, you will have heard these 10 somewhere out there, whether it's an app or a calendar or motivational speech, what have you, it's out there. But what do they really mean? So awareness is that concept of knowing what you know and what you don't know. The beginner's mind is my personal favorite. The beginner's mind is that childish mind that is so happy and so at awe at even the simple things. We are like that until we get to adolescence, and it gets beaten out of us. And we lose that happiness. We lose that joy of having an ice cream or a red balloon, or you have it. And mindfulness encourages the redevelopment of that beginner's mind, and you do it intentionally. And there's a profound thing that happens in your mind when it comes to joy and happiness and creativity and performance when a beginner's mind is reestablished. Acceptance, I mentioned in the last slide. We're in a tough bind right now with COVID. There's a resurgence, and there's another surge of and the new strain that's come out. But just accepting that this is what it is, and trying to move past it to an extent. And this can be applied to anything in life, whether it's a home life or work life, but acceptance is critical. Insight is key. Having insight into what you are doing, what people perceive you as, how is your behavior being affecting the folks around you. Having insight into that's critical. Impermanence, acceptance and impermanence for us at the healthcare system right now is probably the most important. Is impermanence is that concept that things will not last forever. The old saying that this too shall pass is basically impermanence, and really understanding that today is a really bad day and tomorrow might be a bad day too, but you know what, Saturday might be good. And it usually is. Equanimity is a concept that I strive for, and I am always in awe of people that have this, but it's this concept of remaining non-reactive and calm, despite deep down underneath, there might be a lot going on. There might be turmoil going on out there, might a lot of stimulation that may cause you to react, but remaining very calm in demeanor and reaction. Interconnection is probably the part that COVID has destroyed the most. It's the fact that being around people and being around loved ones and friends, almost intentionally, purposely do it, creates something in our brain. It activates neurotransmitters that allows us to have joy and creativity and happiness and not fall into states of depression. Compassion is something we intentionally practice at the hospital, to walk around, and this should be done in every workplace, but to walk around and share moments of compassion with people. If people are going through a rough time, elicit that from them and demonstrate compassion. This is as powerful for the person receiving it as it is to the person giving it. And gratitude is also a huge practice we do at the hospital, to highlight things that people have done, people that, you know, we go through the day and we do a lot of great things, and if it's not recognized, oftentimes it just dies out. But gratitude and expressing gratitude on an intentional basis is a very, very powerful tool. And just having joy in your life, even in these times where the workforces are tight and money might be tight and travel might be gone, find something to find joy in. There is plenty to find joy in, and you have to do it intentionally. And so the reality is most of our minds are anywhere but where they're supposed to be. So you're driving home, you think, you know, how did I get home? What did I listen to? Why am I so tired? Most of our brains look like this guy on the left here. You know, it's just full of kids and work and travel and finances and whether your boss likes you or not, and et cetera, et cetera. And so honestly, we didn't sign up for this as humans. You know, we're designed for another form of function. And interestingly, our brains have two states. My kids know this because when everyone's in a bad mood, they say, "Daddy, we're in the monkey brain stage." Our brains can be very executive functioning, very, very well honed instruments, or they can be the way they are for most people nowadays, which is emotional and reactive. And I call that the monkey brain, the hindbrain. And studies have demonstrated this. Neuroscience has demonstrated this through functional MRIs, where there's little evolution still in the way people act. Just look at the news, look what the news reports, look at our politicians. It's all monkey brain activity. It's not highly executive functioning brains. And so, you know, Dr. Cannon studied this fight or flight or freeze. There's three components to this over 100 years ago. We know about this notion of falling back into the monkey brain state for 100 years, but we've done nothing about it. Nothing about it. We've gone to the moon and come back, and we've done nothing about empowering more executive function. And so the left side is how most of us function. It is the sympathetic overdrive, and everything I'm presenting here is based on scientific studies that they've done through MRIs and hormonal levels and results and morbidity and mortality. But most of us function in the sympathetic state. We have a lot of anxiety, we have a lot of fatigue, a lot of depression, muscle tension, high blood pressure, irritability. And that's because we're constantly in an activated state. The true relaxed state, you know, people always say, oh, people in the Mediterranean live a longer life, because most of them live in this parasympathetic nervous system state. You know, deep breathing, an intentional progressive relaxation, meditation helps, intentionally visualizing positive healing images. And again, I keep using the word intentional. You've got to plan it out. It's not going to be your default. Your default's always going to be sympathetic. And so, unfortunately, you turn on the media outlets and Instagram, and the archetypes of success are a lot of these people who, you know, should be commended for their success. But again, the words out there are, you got to keep doing, you got to keep working, don't sleep. And this notion of you should only sleep when you're dead and just do it. And it's sounds great for a movie line, but it's tasking and it destroys the brain, and it's all sympathetic all the time. And that's probably why we are in the state we are right now as a society, as a workforce. And so we've got to intentionally recognize this. We've got to know what's going on with us. And so the interesting thing is sympathetic does feel good, right? I mean, you guys can relate to this, most of you will. But you're doing a great job. You think to yourself, my boss would be proud. I'm doing great. You get this endorphin rush because someone's patting you on the back for a job well done. Then you say, okay, the boss is proud of me. Now wants me to do some more. Okay, I can do this. You get another pile of work to do because you did such a good job on the last one. Now you're starting to feel tired because you haven't had a chance to rest. And no one estimates how much work you're doing. They just keep giving you more. That's just the nature of how work is. But you got to keep going. You'll rest on the weekend. Oh, I've got to do some more work on the weekend. Oh, well, that's what successful people do. So the archetype falls in here, right? You got to work on weekends. Now you're tired, and then you're behind, and you can't seem to catch up. And when I give this talk, I gave it to shock trauma and some other health facilities, and every person to a T in the room started shaking their head. Then you get to the point where you don't like your job. You don't like going home. And then you say, I need a vacation. Vacation is this mythical thing that is not actually what it is. So you go on vacation, and vacation was stressful. It's the kids, the plane, your partner, traffic, thinking of work, et cetera, et cetera. And so suddenly you see that you are skipping the gym. You start to eat whatever. You skip hanging out with family and friends. The interconnection falls apart. And you have no time to disconnect from anything. And so sympathetic feels great, but it's a horrible thing for us. And so if anyone looks at the screen and can relate, which I'm guessing everyone will, this is how we live our days every day. And so the two concepts that I really try and stress to everyone I work with, and including my kids and my wife, is this notion of the tyranny of time and the thinking mind. We are slaves to time. And I recognize that we are in industries. Look, I'm an anesthesiologist. Time is life, and we've got to do things quickly. And in a critical care setting, we do stuff. However, the vast majority of this tyranny has nothing to do with life and death. These are artifacts we create for ourselves. And the thinking mind, this notion of, I need to do this because something will happen if I don't. And so we created this distorted reality. These timelines in our own brain for no reason at all. And so the key is to recognize that some of these thoughts, if not most of these thoughts that we generate in our brain for timelines and deadlines, and we got to do this because that, are just your thoughts. They're not you. Your thoughts are just that. And don't be taken hostage by them. And so our brain is mostly this. It's full of all this crowded, chaos. And most people will constantly think, oh, I could have been somebody. And so this constant notion circulates, and you have to, again, intentionally try and liberate yourself from this tyranny of time and thinking mind. And so if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from this talk, is this notion of the amygdala hijacking you. This has been very well studied and is very common in the neuroscience world. We are hijacked every day by this tiny portion of our brain called the amygdala, which is that tiny spot right in the middle. The neocortex, is where our executive function is. That's when you're doing your best work. You are calm, you do make smart decisions, you have good reward systems. And that big spindle on the bottom is your hindbrain, that's the monkey brain. You want little of that functioning. The amygdala is what really manages all of it, and not in a good way. So this slide pretty much shows what neuroscience has demonstrated. Number one, you have sensory input that comes into your brain. And there's two parts of your brain that are responsible for taking in this input and doing something with it. One is the cortex, which is, again, your executive function, your CEO part. And then there's the amygdala, which is your emotional side. The problem is, the way we were designed is the amygdala will always have an override on your cortex. So even if something requires you to use executive function, your amygdala is going to consistently override it. And so the vast majority of our reactions to everyday life become emotional, limbic system, unthinking response. And it's not executive, it is not thoughtful, and we become very reactive. And so blood flow studies have demonstrated that most of what we do is in that monkey brain region. We get hijacked by the amygdala. And it's just the way it's designed. And the only way to fix this is to do intentional activities to get out of it. And so, is there a solution? There is. And there's this concept, again, well studied, called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, we used to think, is only in kids, where if you teach them how to play the piano, they'll learn very quickly. But it happens at all ages. Neurons that fire together wire together. So if you have issues with anger, rage, if you intentionally work towards reducing those, your brain will actually rewire to not have those hormonal responses to triggers. But again, intentionality here is key, and training it is key. And so what does the research say about mindfulness? There's a whole field of neuroscience called Contemplative Neuroscience, and they've studied this through, mostly mindfulness techniques and meditative techniques and intentional behavioral changes. And it's been shown that there's less reactivity, better decision-making and problem solving, better listening, more mental clarity and creativity, more joy and satisfaction. And studies have shown, and this is why I'll show in a second, why the big companies, the Googles of the world, have been doing this for 15 years, and healthcare is way behind the game here. Poorly managed stress is the most common denominator in healthcare cost, employee absenteeism, attrition, and decreased productivity. There are multiple studies demonstrating this. So the goal is to activate your parasympathetic, your calm part of your nervous system, and regulate your sympathetic. Sympathetic is still important, but you don't want that to be your dominating nervous system. So I love this slide because there are some things that only graphics can demonstrate. The goal of mindfulness, the goal of all of this avoiding amygdala hijack, of avoiding being reactive, is to proactively practice, meditate, so that when you have a trigger, whether it's your 6-year-old daughter like me or something else in work, you go from I am angry to I am experiencing anger. And there's a profound difference to the two. And in fact, some cultures have known this for centuries, and they actually have it incorporated in their language. In Hindi, they don't say I am angry, they say anger is coming. And it's funny because I've been presenting this at our hospital for a while, and I'll run into surgeons or techs and other folks, and they'll come to me and they'll say, Dr. Sardarian, anger is coming. And it's great because it's a very meta state. They are taking on this, and they said it's really been helpful for them. So it's a wonderful thing to see that people are taking it. So taking that meta state of recognizing what your triggers are and almost preparing for them. And so there is a significant amount of increase in mindfulness in the workplace. And there's a lot of studies and articles in Forbes and other papers demonstrating the benefits. Again, Google and some of the other big firms have been doing this for 15. General Mills, Google, Chase Manhattan, they have been doing this for a long, long time. The studies have been showing the benefits. Google has its own institute. Stanford has its own institute. So it is a low-cost approach to reducing the reactivity of folks and the amount of stress. And of course, this dovetails into wellness and how people end up enjoying coming to work on a daily basis. I always get this question, this all sounds great, but stop right here and tell me how you do it. And, the easiest way is, and I will tell you a backstory. About 3 years ago, I had a colleague that was big into mindfulness that took me to dinner and told me about it, and I completely blew him off. And I said, look, I don't have time to meditate. This is not for me. It took the pandemic and stress and burnout for me to actually look at it. And, when the science was presented to me, I couldn't doubt it. And so I started doing it, and I started with an app. And there's all these great apps. I use Insight Timer, but Calm, there's great. Find a meditation that works for you. You can start with 1 minute. You can start with 3 breaths, but start with something, make it intentional, do it throughout the day, once or twice or 3 times. Expand to 10 minutes twice a day. The studies have shown when you get to about 10 minutes twice a day, and then some people are at the higher level of 45 minutes, you get a profound change in how less reactive you are. And I don't want people to mistake what I'm talking about. I'm not saying people become in a vegetative state and they no longer can do their job. You still see everything this way you see them. You are just less reactive. It's less tasking. You go home with 60, 70% more energy than you did before. And so there's methods within the meditation, something called the body scan, where sometimes we have parts of our body that hurts we don't even know. And taking that moment during meditation to do a body scan, sit quietly, say, oh man, I didn't even know my back hurt. I didn't know my shoulders were so tight. I didn't know my neck hurt. And so there's all these wonderful apps that kind of walk you through it. And what is 5 minutes in our day? What is 10 minutes in our day? It's kind of ridiculous that people can't do it. And I was the biggest, culprit of this, but I do it religiously now. And it's really changed my life dramatically. So, this all sounds great. but I'm too busy to meditate, and probably half the group here may be thinking this, if not more. My kids, my work, I can't sit still to meditate. I don't need meditating, I need a break. And so, you know, if I presented this, if someone presented this to me as a scientist and said, you need to go meditate, it's great, I would say, where's the evidence? Well, the evidence is out there. I didn't put all this, the graphs and stuff up there because I'm into visual presentations that have impact and not necessarily graphs. But the only thing worse than a blind follower is a seeing denier, right? I mean, this is out there, it's working. There's a reason why so many large organizations are investing large amounts of money into this, because the returns are there. And not only that, it's the right thing to do because it's not just beneficial to the workplace, but this is a concept that people can take home with them. I'll tell you, all of these notions here on this screen, I personally went through. And then I went through with my wife, and, you know, fast forward a year and a half, and today she's texting me how much she likes this new meditation she's doing. And then I'm gonna be very honest with everyone. And my wife would make fun of me when I first started and saying, oh, I can't believe you meditate. So getting past these notions of what meditation is, I used to first demonstrate it at the hospital. People would come to me with the, you know, with the typical yoga pose, almost in a funny fashion. And now they're understanding that there's a science behind this, and it's a non-denominational thing. This helps, and it's easy to do. You don't have to join an expensive gym. You don't have to go to, you know, Yosemite on a hike or to an Alaskan cruise. This is something you can do anywhere. I personally drive in early in the morning. I park in the parking lot. I do 10 minutes of meditation in my car, and I'll do it once in the afternoon when I'm going home. And I meditate with the kids as well. And I'll tell you, I challenge my kids to acknowledge their monkey brain. You know, for those of you who have kids, and those of you that can relate, you know, kids are reactive. That's their natural state of mind. But I've challenged them to be less reactive, to be kind and compassionate. There's a big movement within schools right now about compassion training and not getting hijacked by your amygdala. And so I challenge them, and you know, it's got to be intentional, and you've got to work towards it, and you can't give up, but it's got to start with you first. This is me on a 2-year journey, and I do a significant amount of reading on this, significant reading of following up with what the latest literature is and what the benefits are. And I'm, you know, watching it within myself. For those of you following the news, you know, our healthcare facilities are in a full surge again now with the COVID numbers up and a challenge with the new variant. And so we are seeing constant stress within our colleagues, within our system, with our patients. And so the goal here is to form a force field around you. My brother is a big reduce your stress kind of guy. He says, why don't you do another job to reduce your stress? That's very easy to say, but most of us can't avoid stress. Stress is everywhere. What we can do is create a force field around us so that the stress, I call them almost meteorites that are constantly coming in. It's your own little force field to protect against the stress, and mindfully knowing that those things are coming. When you go home, you know some of the stresses that are already coming. Sometimes you come to work, you know some of the stresses that are coming. You know what triggers you. Thanksgiving is a big trigger for people because family come by. Intentionally building that force field, and also being able to intentionally talk to an employer about something that triggers you, is key to creating a mindfulness setting where you are not burning out. You're not jumping from job to job. And so I encourage everyone to please think about what we're doing on a daily basis to our own minds, and how stressful we are, and what we do to avoid some of this stress, right? Some of us, we used to be, you know, I was a gym rat, and I used to go to the gym, and then I realized that I would go to the gym and be on the phone the whole time, or my thought would be at work. That's fine and great, but you need to really disconnect and do what's right for your mind as well. So if you're going to be taking care of your mind, you got to really be able to disconnect from it, everything else. Some people deal with their stress with alcohol and other items. And again, studies have shown this is short-lived. And in fact, it adds to the level of stress that you have. Simple things like a walk in nature for 10 minutes is so powerful, or just sitting quietly. Mindfulness really is the concept of non-doing. So if you can sit quietly in a room, put your phone away, just sit there challenge yourself for 10 minutes to sit quietly. There's a profound thing that happens. You've got to be intentional. This doesn't just come about. You can't go to work and say, oh, okay, well, as soon as I have a quiet moment, I'll meditate. Nope. You're going to always fail. It's almost like going to the gym. If you don't plan it out, you're never going to go. Eating healthy. If you don't plan it out, you're just going to eat whatever's around you. So you got to be intentional. You got to plan it out. You got to put it as a priority. And you got to be proactive. Put it on the schedule. That's why these Apple, all these smartphones are now popping up with reminders. Plan it out. Make sure you make it a part of your day, and the rewards will be there. I guarantee you. And I love this concept. You know, when you start to meditate, you start being self-aware and meta with yourself. And I've experienced this myself. And just as an aside, you know, if anyone on this call thinks, you know, I was very much into this years ago, and you know, I'm into the non-alpha type mentality. Again, knowing where I came from to get to this point is important. You know, I'm as alpha as, in my opinion, as most people come. And to me, being able to calm the mind is very critical. So when you do meditation, you take time to yourself, you start to meet yourself. And sometimes you haven't met yourself in a long time. For me, I hadn't met myself since college, because it was college, med school, residency, and then kids and everything else. And suddenly you have this 20-year gap. So taking time to yourself, letting your mind just do that little thing it'll do for 5-10 minutes is critical. When you do this, only when you start to meet yourself, can you then be of benefit to your colleagues, your friends, your family, to society. You got to meet yourself again. You've got to calm everything down, and you've got to intentionally be meta so that you recognize some of the things we're doing to ourselves. There is a reason why we can't blame COVID for everything. There's a reason why we have reached a point of burnout in society in general. We can point our fingers to social media, to politics, to COVID, to this, to that, to that. But at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible for how we receive the stress. No one can force that stress on you. And so building the force field is critical. And I can't recommend this more to people. Again, it's taken quite a while for me to come on board. Now I'm seeing the evolutionary time it takes colleagues. And I've also been quite surprised by how many people tell me, you know, I've been into mindfulness and meditation for a long time, but no, it didn't feel like I could talk about it. It was almost taboo. And it's wonderful to hear how many people are into it, and how it is not anything denominational. It is a simple concept of meeting yourself and calming your mind down so you can do things in the right way. And I can tell you it's a profound tool as a parent, because if anything triggers you more than anything else, it's your family and your kids. And demonstrating reactivity around them is one of the big faults we do as parents. So the next slide really is a big thank you to this team for having me present. You know, these talks I usually give in person. There's a lot of back and forth interaction. A lot of people want to know, you know, how it got started and where we are in our course at the hospital and other areas that have implemented this. But I think, you know, when people talk about wellness and wellness within the workforce and wellness within industries, this is really the concept, is that meta awareness of what we're doing to ourselves, of creating that force field, of acknowledging when there are significant issues going on with our minds. You know, mental health is a big taboo, but all of this kind of works together. So I want to leave a good amount of time for us to discuss and chat back and forth. I get my best ideas and best thoughts when we have some robust interaction, but I really appreciate everyone listening.
Thank you. I have somebody whose name is Joyful Communicator who has raised their hand, so I'm going to allow them to talk. Okay, go ahead.
Hey, how are you? This is Rose. Sorry, I started Zoom with a Bible study group, and I just named myself Joyful Communicator.
I love it.
I I definitely relate to everything that you've said, and I thank you so much for bringing this in the forefront and talking about it openly. What books or reading do you recommend for starting conversations within families, my husband's, my son's, and extended families?
I'm putting two names on the chat, but really the beginning text that a lot of scientists have started on is the one by John Kabat-Zinn, which is called The Full Catastrophe, which is a wonderful name because he says life is kind of a full catastrophe, and he goes through the scientific proofs of how it should be implemented and what it makes sense. And so I audible all these books, and I've actually audibled it about 6 times now. Another one is A Mindful Day. Within my MBA program, I got to meet Lori Cameron. She's actually out of Bethesda, and Lori is Google's mindfulness guru, and she's a wonderful teacher. And her book, her Audible, is just such a calming thing to listen to. But she goes through these concepts, and these two books have differing approaches, but basically talk about the same concepts.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next is Julianne Utz. Okay, Julianne, go ahead.
Hi. It's Julie, Dr. Sardarian.
Oh, hey, Julie.
That's my legal name, and it's the name that comes up on stuff. So, but one of the things that we had learned in a lecture was that you don't, in healthcare, that we don't look for good days, that we look for good moments, and we celebrate the good moments.
Yep.
And so I brought that back to my family, and we come back every day and we share what made us smile that day. So it could be as simple as the sunrise or as significant as an interaction, but something today, no matter how bad your day was, something made you smile. And as a family, we'll focus on what made us smile. And we often leave the tag, find your smile, keep the darkness at bay. And so it's one of those are the moments that I'll start with trying to find my peaceful moment. So
yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I do the same with my kids. Every night when we're putting them to bed, I tell them, tell me something happy you did today. I want you to think about that happiness as you go to bed. And then I do it for myself, but that is the intentional power of being positive. I know it's difficult, is beautiful. So I commend you for doing that. I love that.
Okay, someone's asking about app recommendations.
Yeah, so different apps work for different people. For me, I just got into the Insight Timer and works well for me, but Calm, Headspace, there isn't necessarily one better than the other. I use Insight Timer, to be honest with you. I use 2 different meditations. That's been what I've been doing for a long time. Just find something that works. What's the voice of the presenter that works for you? Sometimes there's a tone in the background that works. Try different things out. And someone wrote, how do you calm your mind? I don't. My brain is never calm. But again, when we say be in a non-judgmental state, that's to yourself too. So just because your mind is all over the place doesn't mean you judge yourself. Because my wife used to say, I can't get my mind straight, calm, and I can't meditate. I said, well, that's okay. Meditating is allowing your mind to just be in a playground and play for 10 minutes. And so don't judge it. Don't think you have to force it to calm down. Just let it be for 10 minutes. And so you'll notice that at the 7 or 8 minute mark, it'll be a little bit calmer. We're not shooting for, Zen Buddhism here in Nirvana. We're shooting for slight calmness, slight calmness, slight calmness. And so don't be worried if you meditate and you're thinking about work the whole time. That's okay. It's a little bit every time, a little bit every time, a little bit every time. And so when you go to the gym for the first time, you're not going to be lifting those heavy weights. You're not going to be running on the treadmill at high speed. You're going to start slow. So don't be worried about calming your mind. That is not necessarily the goal.
I had a question on one of your slides. You mentioned that through meditation, getting to know yourself or know yourself again, something like that. Could you explain a little more about that?
Sure. So, a lot of us run through life and we don't recognize that we may be moody, anxious, angry, short. So those are the negatives. Or that we're brilliant, we're charismatic, we may be beautiful to other people. We just don't recognize. We kind of fly through life when we have these notions of ourselves. You know, we have this archetype of who is Ludwig, right? I'm Armenian, I grew up, and that's my archetype. I saw a Tikhon name in there, so I recognize there's another Armenian in this cohort. That's why I named it. But we don't really get to know yourself. You don't get to really say, you know what? Every Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm just beaten down. I wonder why that is. I am a moody guy, or you know what? I am an uplifting guy, and I have this creativity I didn't even know about. And so, when you take your time to let your brain be, you start to recognize some of the brilliance that's in there, and your brain actually will thank you for it. And you'll notice that after 10 minutes, you will come out of it slightly more positive, and it almost thanks you for giving it 10 minutes. And so when you meet yourself, it means you have now made a connection with your brain. It's no longer just a tool for you to get from A to B. It's actually a interaction.
Thank you.
Apologies for the overhead here.
That's okay. Do you have any suggestions for using these kinds of techniques when kind of finding yourself in the midst of one of those angry moments or stressful moments, as opposed to going away and finding quiet places? Are there techniques also that help you deal with the moment at hand?
Yeah. You know, I still get triggered, and it's tough for us right now in the hospital. My goal is that if I get reactive, if I get stressed and I feel the burnout, yesterday was one of those days, to almost imagine myself looking down and labeling it and saying, this is Ludwig stressed, and taking note of that moment, so that when you have, and you know, taking 3 or 4 deep breaths, you can do anywhere. So I would suggest that anytime you are feeling the burden, the saying goes, if you can take 3 deep breaths, you can meditate. Take 3 deep breaths, and that'll help you a little bit to get through that moment. But the key is to walk away from that moment, even if you blow up and you become a monster, is to take from that moment and have watched it in a meta state. When my kids act out, I immediately point to them, like, which brain did you use? And they say monkey brain. I said, note that you just acted out. I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to say anything about it, but I want you to fix it next time. So as you're going through something, yes, you may not be able to break away and meditate. Take a couple deep breaths and just take notes, almost watching yourself, of how you're reacting. Because the next time your brain will realize, once you're in that state, how you did it the last time, and almost develop a pathway to not do it the same way.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? I've been trying to watch the chat and the hands, so make sure I'm not missing anybody. Well, this is terrific. I cannot thank you enough. This has really been really eye-opening. I think I need to mute somebody. There you go. Julie, maybe it was you. Sorry about that. All right, so I just want to take a few minutes to close. I'm going to take my screen back. We've gotten through our Q&A. So I just wanted to put this up here, and we will put these slides and recording out on the website. I don't know that we'll be sending you a notification, but give us a week or two and then go out and check the Maryland HIMSS chapter website for the recording. We had a lot of people asking for the recording, which is terrific. So they want to be able to refer back to it and start to incorporate this into their life. And the other thing that'll be here for you is we have these new pillar committees that Phil was talking about that are going to bring you know, new level of subject matter expertise to the things that we're doing. And so here are the contacts for our committee chairs and the topics that they work on. Feel free to reach out to them with ideas or with, if you want to join them, we would welcome that. Because as Phil talked about, we want to move past just educational events, but also bring other value to our membership. Oh, I think I just saw 5 chats. Let me. Okay, I think we're good. We have an upcoming event, the data integration. The folks and analytics folks are putting together an event. We don't have a date and a time yet. We're shooting for the January timeframe, so we wanted to make you aware of that. Watch for that. And the last thing I wanted to do was we typically do a door prize drawing.
Jennifer, can I jump in here for just a second?
Please.
Hey,
so or anything?
No, we're good. Real quick, I wanted to remind everybody, you should have seen an email today. If you didn't, let me know, but we've partnered now with National HIMSS on doing some really cool new things with the Accelerate platform. If you're not signed up for Accelerate, sign up for Accelerate now, because you'll get a $5 gift card for Starbucks for free. You know, who can't use some Starbucks? Go, you know, mindfulness with caffeine. What that would be awesome. But even more rewarding, if you sign up with Accelerate under Maryland HIMSS chapter, in response to the email that was sent out from National HIMSS, you're going to get access to all of the recorded content from HIMSS 21 for free. It's a pretty amazing offer that they've made to our chapter, just to our chapter, for helping them to pioneer a new functionality and Accelerate. So I just want to throw that out there. I'll shut up. Jennifer, let's give away some prizes.
Okay, so you need to be present to win. So I need you guys to raise your hand if you're here. The first person is Eric Talley. Eric, are you here? Oh God, now I have a lot of people raising hands. I'm looking for you just in case. I don't see you. Joy Upton from MedStar. Joy, are you here?
She should be.
She is. There she is. Joy, you are the winner of a $50 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. I can unmute you so we can hear you hoot and holler. All right, Joy, thank you so much. And let me see who's raising their hands. Steve, did you need to raise your hand? I've unmuted you.
No, that was an accident. Sorry.
No worries. It happens. Amanda Thompson, you raised your hand. Amanda, you can talk if you need to.
Oh, okay. Hi. Sorry about that. No, I thought you were saying to raise your hand to let you know that we were here.
Oh, okay. That's okay. So maybe Debbie, is that the same for you, Debbie Ellerby?
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I thought you said raise your hand if you're here so that you could be selected for a prize.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Nope, I didn't say that well, so I apologize. Nope, so we have a winner, and so I think we're good to go. I want to thank everybody for their time today. I think just looking at the chat, I can tell how many people really appreciated and needed this kind of information, and hopefully we'll all put it into practice and become more centered and more mindful. So thanks to all. I'm going to end our session today, and hopefully we will see you next month. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
And happy holidays.